Hello everyone. In this video, I'll be discussing a concept from Introduction to Database Management Systems, which is called as users of the database approach. Here, by users of the database approach, we mean database as well as DBMS, that is Database Management System. A database is nothing but a collection of interrelated data, whereas by DBMS, we mean collection of all the software modules that are required to create and maintain the database. Now we'll try to discuss users of both database as well as DBMS, that is Database Management System. Basically, there are two major classifications of this users of database management systems. The classification is based upon the type of the user or what exactly the user is interested in. Some of the users are actually interested in what data is stored in the database, that is they are interested in the content of database, whereas we are having one more set of users who are not actually interested in what type of data is stored in the database, but they are interested in how to maintain this database or how to make this database operational. So based upon these two concepts, we are having two classifications: actors on the scene and workers behind the scene. These actors on the scene are the people whose jobs involve day-to-day use of a large database. The best example I can take for this actors on the scene is a clerk in a bank or a person or clerk sitting at the ticket booking counter. They are actually interested in, if I'm considering bank database, there the clerk that is present, he is interested in what is the balance of a particular user. For if I am providing the account number, he is interested in what content is present for that account number. For example, it can be balance of the amount that is present or his last transactions, all the things that is they are forming the content of that database. Okay, he becomes actors on the scene. Whereas we are having one more set of users of database approach who are called as workers behind the scene. These workers behind the scene are those who are to maintain the database system environment, but who are not actually or actively interested in the database itself, whether let it be a bank database or let it be a college database or whatever database you are maintaining. These workers behind the scene, they are not interested in the content, but they are ultimately interested in how to create this, how to provide the user the interface with the database, and it can be like how to design the tools that helps the user in managing the system or getting additional properties from the database. All such things are the duties of workers behind the scene. Now we'll try to discuss one by one in detail. First, I'll start with actors on the scene. First type of actors on the scene is database administrator. Now here I must mention, wherever we are having a resource being shared among more than one users, it can be in terms of computer or in general. Whenever a resource is shared among more than one user, there must be some kind of coordination or someone who is managing this shared access to this resource. The main reason of presence of a coordinator is to manage in such a way that there are no access conflicts. If two persons are trying to access the same resource at the same time, there must be someone to resolve the conflict. This is in general. But here, when we are thinking about database approach, in our database approach, our database itself is a resource, that is, it is having all the contents. All the content is present in the database as well as database management system. All these two together becomes the resource in our case. So here also we are having a coordinator or a person who manages all these resources, whom we call as database administrator. Every database has a database administrator. In database environment, the primary resources, database itself, and their secondary resources, the DBMs related software. Administering these resources is the responsibility of the database administrator. Along with this responsibility, our database administrator has additional responsibilities such as authorizing access to the database. See, this database administrator, he has not created the database or he has not designed the database. He is just managing the database. He is making sure when there are more than one users present, he is making sure all the access to these resources is well and good. Okay, for one of the responsibilities of this DBA is authorizing access to the database. Now, in a big organization, there can be different types of users present. For example, some of them might be only clerks, or some of them might be at the higher level in the hierarchy. So based upon their responsibilities, based upon their position in the organization, they will be provided access to the particular resources in the database. So providing this access based upon their privileges or position in the organization is the responsibility of database administrator. If I am considering a college system, what exactly student is capable to access in the database is different. What exactly faculty is able to access in the database is different. So based upon their roles or positions, providing them the access is duty of database administrator. This authorizing the access is basically achieved by making use of a username followed by password. So what exactly this DBA does, whenever there is a new user, he creates new user, then he assigns the roles and responsibilities for this user, what all resources he can access, whether he will be only able to view the contents or whether he will be able to modify the contents also. All these roles will be assigned by the database administrator. That is one of his duties. Next comes coordinating and monitoring its use. If we are having a resource and more than one person are trying to access the same resource, so coordinating such conflicts is also, coordinating and monitoring is also duty of database administrator. Then comes, now I am managing the database. At some point of time, I may require additional hardware or software. For example, now I am maintaining the database in a particular size space. Okay, let us say I am storing my database in 10 GB. At some point of time, as my database increases, as the size of my database increases, I may require additional storage. In such situation, getting that additional resource and making the necessary changes to the database system is also duty of database administrator. So I took an example of hardware resource. Like the same, I may need some additional module to my database, software module to my database to provide additional capability. In such situations also, deciding which software module I will require, my database will require, and how to install it, how to synchronize it with my existing database is also duty of database administrator. Next comes the database administrator is accountable for problems such as breach of security or poor system response time. Here, breach of security means some unauthorized person is accessing my database. He is not actually allowed to view particular contents, but by mistake that person is able to, that person somehow is accessing that content. So that in such situation we call such an environment or such a method, such a situation as breach of security. So database administrator is responsible and accountable. He is the accountable person because providing access and authorizing the access was the duty of database administrator. If some unauthorized person is able to access the database, then DBA is held responsible. And similarly, if the system response time, that is in how much time my system is giving response to my queries or to access, is also responsible, providing this is also responsibility of database administrator. This is our first type of database user, that is database administrator, who is the first among actors on the scene. Similarly, next comes database designer. Here I must mention here, this design process is actually before the implementation of the database itself. After that, accessing of the database comes into picture. This design phase, for example, customer is coming to developer and he is telling, okay, these are all my requirements, I want a database to be developed. So it is duty of the database designer. He will take all the requirements from the user, and what he will do, he will decide what all contents should be present in the database. Then what he will decide, how to implement these contents. Okay, for example, if I am developing database for a college, the customer may tell, I want to maintain information about student, faculties, and so on. He will tell, okay, how to implement what all he wants to store in particularly of that student, name, roll number, okay, what all information he wants to store about that particular student. Deciding that is duty of database designer. After that, now I know what all are the requirements of my user and what all I have to store in my database, that I have come to know. Next thing is how to implement this. Okay, I have to decide what all structures or what all program structures or what all data structures I will be needing to represent this data. Okay, deciding that is also duty of the database designer. Database designers are responsible for identifying the data to be stored in the database and for choosing appropriate structures to represent and store this data. Or having third set of users who actually forms major part of the users of the database system. Okay, they are called as end users. There are different types of end users actually. So these end users are the people whose jobs require access to the database for querying, updating, and generating the reports. The database primarily exists for their use. The end user who are calling, whom we are calling, specifically we are designing our database for them. Okay, so there are different types of end users. The first end users are casual end users. These casual end users, occasionally they access the database, very occasionally, but they make use of different information. They may need different information each time. For example, the managers present in a organization, they rarely access the database, but every time they may require different information. Sometime they are accessing the information about the employees. Next time they may require the information about resources present. Next time they may require some other information about the previous projects and so on. Okay, every time they are accessing, they are in need of different information. The casual end users make use of sophisticated database query languages to specify their requests. Usually we call them as query languages, and they are usually middle or high level managers or some occasional browsers. Their requirement is specific, that is every time they are in need of different information, and when they are accessing the database, they are making use of a sophisticated database query language. That is the thing about casual end users. Next we have parametric end users or naive end users. These parametric end users are the type of users whose job itself is to access the database. Their job involves day-to-day access to the database. For example, the best example is the reservation clerks or the cashiers present in the bank. All these are their job itself is to access the database regularly. For example, when you go to bank, we just provide the account number to that clerk. What he will do, based on the account number, he will access our database and he is making the necessary transactions. They are constantly querying and updating the database using standard types of queries and updates. Now, if we see these, if we observe here, these, when we know parametric end user job itself involves day-to-day access to that database. Okay, there must be specific fixed set of instructions provided for them. For the casual end users, for every time they are in need of different information, we cannot fix the fixed step of procedures that are to be followed. Whereas for parametric end users, every day they are accessing the database and every time they are in need of same information. In such situation, what we can do, we can create a specific set of instructions which are called as canned transactions. These canned transactions are nothing but fixed set of instructions. For example, if I go to the bank, what I will do, I will provide the account number. This bank clerk, what he will do, he will be provided with a window, okay, where he can enter the account number. He will enter the account number and he will just press on the submit. As soon as he presses on the submit, all the information regarding that customer will be provided to him. Similar, after that, the customer can possibly make a deposit or withdrawal. That is fixed. So what we will do, what all steps are to be followed for making the deposit, what all steps are to be followed for making the withdrawal. So we call them as canned transactions. We write a program that is a fixed set of instructions for withdrawal, one for withdrawal, one for deposit. Okay, this the set of programs that are set of steps that are written are accessed by these parametric end users. Okay, we call such step of procedures, such steps together as canned transactions. These canned transactions have been carefully programmed and tested. The tasks that such users perform are varied. Bank tellers check account balances, whereas they can post the withdrawals and deposits. Checking the account, for checking the account, they will be having different set of different steps. For making the, for checking the, next for making the withdrawal, they will be having different steps. For making the deposits, they will be having the different steps. Similarly, if we consider a reservation clerk, the what all steps are to be provided or what all options are to be provided for this clerk, we decide them first. After that, they will be programmed specifically. These programs are to be accessed by these parametric end users. That is, in simple, if I have to tell, parametric end users will have their own interface. Okay, based upon their fixed operations, we are creating an interface for these parametric end users and providing it to them. Okay, we are also having different set of users whose duty is to design an interface for these users. We will see them in workers behind the scene. Next comes sophisticated end users. These include engineers, scientists, business analysts, and others. These they try to familiarize themselves completely with the facilities of the DBMS so as to implement their applications to meet their complex requirements. One example I would like to take here is the system analysts, business analysts, or in simple, the we might have seen whenever we make a search, there will be the search. For example, I have made a search before 5 minutes. Okay, next time when I am searching in the same same interface that is provided, it will be providing actually recommendations. Okay, people, for example, if I have checked some product in Facebook, for example, if I have searched for specific item in Facebook, next time when I will be accessing, I will be shown with the advertisements which are also called as recommendation systems. So these sophisticated end users can be like a business analyst who is trying to understand the data that is being generated. What exactly data is present in the database, he is trying to familiarize himself with the database and he is trying to make a business decision. Okay, such users are called as sophisticated end users. Next comes the last example of actors on the scene is standalone users. Standalone user is a type of user who is the whole and sole user of a database system. For example, I can consider best example for this would be the database that is maintained in a small hotel or in a small shop or our contacts also. Okay, I am so whole and solely maintaining my contacts. Okay, in my phone I am having contacts, phone memory, phone contacts, where I'll be providing a specific structure to that data. First name, last name, followed by name, then optional where I'm having address and so and so. This database, I'm just calling this itself, phone contact itself, as a database now. Now that I am creating the database and I am maintaining that database. So this is an example of standalone user. Okay, there is only one user present for that database. So these are different types of actors on the scene. I'm sorry, there is one more. System analysts and application programs. System analysts determine the requirements for end users, especially name or parametric end users, and develop specifications for CAN transactions that meet these requirements. System analysts, duty of the system analyst is to understand what all are the needs of a particular parametric end user. For example, what is the requirement or what all are the operations of a bank clerk or bank cashier. Okay, deciding that is duty of the system analyst. Okay, for example, if I'm considering the bank approach, bank cashier, he will be needing operate set of operations for checking the balance, then checking the making the withdrawal, then making the deposit. Okay, what all operations are to be performed for a withdrawal, what all operations are to be performed for a deposit, deciding that in general is the duty of system analyst. Okay, so this next comes application programmer. What these application programmers do, they take these requirements or requirements for the canned transactions from system analysts and they implement them. Application programmers implement these specifications as programs. Then they test, debug, document and maintain these canned transactions. Next we will move on to next type of users, that is workers behind the scene. These workers behind the scene, they are not, as we discussed before, these workers behind the scene, they are not actually interested in what is content of the database, but they are actually interested in how to create and maintain this database. Okay, it can be in simple, if I have to tell, these workers behind the scene, it is immaterial for them whether they are working on a database for college or whether they are working on database maintained for a bank. Okay, they are not interested in content of that database. These persons who associated with the design, development and operation of the DBM software and system environment. In that we are having first type, DBMS system designers and implementers. See, before also where we saw designers, database designer, there the database designer is trying to decide what is to be stored in the database. Okay, what data is to be stored in the database, deciding that is duty of the database designer. But designing the DBMS module itself is the duty of DBMS system designers. These are the persons who design and implement the DBMS modules and interfaces as a software package. Ultimately, not just database, but DBMS as a whole. Designing that is the duty of these system designers. Next comes tool developers. Tool developers are the persons who are trying to provide additional tools that may be required by the user. Maybe not right now, in the future, whatever is the requirement of the user. Based upon that, now I have created the database and DBMS system designer has designed the database and implementers have implemented these specifications. Now database is up and running. At this point of time, I may need additional capabilities to be provided to my database. Understanding them and providing an interface for them is the duty of tool developer. These include persons who design and implement tools, the software packages that facilitate the database system design and use and help improve the performance. Always these tools are not for making the DBMS system working. They are actually present to give additional capability to our DBMS module. Tools are optional packages that are often purchased separately. Next comes operators and maintenance personnel. These are the system administration personnel who are responsible for the actual running and maintenance of the hardware as well as software environment for the database system. Thank you.